Friends, this story is about a writer who had no love in him, so he used to just have fun with new girls. One day, he falls in love with a beautiful girl as soon as he sees her, but the girl does not expect his love, which breaks his heart. So let's see how he gets his love. Friends, the story is very interesting, so stay tuned to the end of the video. At the beginning of the story, we see Chris, who had to write a story on love, but Chris does not understand what to write because he had never fallen in love with any girl. Chris tells us that in his childhood, he had tried to love a girl, but even then he did not fall in love. So, Chris now meets new girls and romances with them, but when the boyfriends of those girls come to know about it, Chris gets beaten up by them. Chris's manager asks Chris to complete his story, and Chris tells him that he does not want to write anything about love. Actually, Chris wants to write an action movie, but Chris's manager tells him that unless he writes a love story, he will not let him write any action movie. Actually, Chris did not believe in love at all because when he was young, his mother left him and ran away with someone, and since then his grandfather raised him, and whenever any girl proposes to him, Chris tells her only one thing, that he will never be able to love her. One day Chris goes to a charity event with his friend. Chris came there thinking that he would get to see new girls there, but he does not find even one girl there. Then a girl named Amy comes there. Amy talks to Chris and asks him, "Why have you come here?" Then Chris tells her that I just came here to see good girls. In this way they talk a lot among themselves, but then Amy's boyfriend comes there. So Amy goes with him. Chris had a great time talking to Amy, but seeing her go with her boyfriend breaks his heart. So he messages all his ex-girlfriends and invites them to meet him. There a girl comes to meet Chris, and they both start chatting, but Chris was still thinking about Amy. Chris quickly goes to the same hotel where he met Amy. Chris asks the staff there about Amy, but the staff there is unable to tell him anything about Amy. Actually, Chris did not even know Amy's name, so he steals the guest list from there. The next day, Chris tells all this to his friends and tells them that this is the first time he has felt this way about a girl. All of Chris' friends were writers too. They tell Chris that you should meet that girl again. When you meet her again, you will find her just like a normal girl. Chris's friend Scott tells Chris that love is not something that a boy and a girl do in a room. Love is done by feeling each other. Chris also starts feeling love now, and he understands that there is someone for everyone here. Chris goes home and tells everything to his grandfather. The grandfather tells Chris that if you are thinking so much about that girl, then you should find that girl and meet her. Who knows, that girl may be special for you. Chris gets an idea, and he makes a list of all the charity events happening in the city and goes there with his friend Scott to find Amy because he met Amy for the first time in a charity event. Chris goes to charity events at different places where Chris meets a businessman. The businessman asks Chris about him, and then Chris tells him about his. Chris tells a lot of big things about her. Chris was tired of going to so many events because he did not find Amy anywhere. So he thinks of going to one last event. When Chris goes there, he sees businessman Chris there. So he calls Chris to give a speech on stage, and he praises Chris a lot. When Chris is giving a speech on stage, he sees Amy there. So he quickly goes to Amy and talks to her. Chris asks Amy, "Have you come here with your boyfriend too?" Amy tells him, "No, I have come here alone." Both of them reach the beach while talking. Amy feels that Chris is helping people a lot because Chris is coming to every charity event. In this way, both of them talk a lot among themselves, but Chris is unable to tell Amy what is in his heart. Next day, Chris goes to his friends. Chris says to Amy that I wanted to kiss Amy yesterday, but she has a boyfriend. Amy also comes there. Chris goes shopping with Amy, where Amy says to Chris that maybe you are following me. Chris tells Amy that we should keep meeting. Amy tells Chris that I have a boyfriend who does not like all this at all. Chris tells Amy that we can meet as friends. Amy agrees to this. Chris tells his friends that Amy and I are just friends. Chris's friend tells Chris that a boy and a girl are never friends. There is some relationship between them. Chris goes on a friend date with Ellie, where Ellie tells Chris that if we keep meeting each other like this, then our conversation will progress. Ellie hears Chris's heartbeat and tells Chris that you don't have a heart in you. They dance to the music for a long time, and now it is time for Ellie to leave. Ellie tells Chris that I am going to another charity event tomorrow. You can also come with me there. Chris did not want to go there, but still he says yes to Ellie. Ellie's car does not start, so Ellie asks Chris to drop her home. Chris drops Ellie at her home. After coming home, Chris tells his friends about Ellie and her date. Chris' friends tell Chris that if you meet another girl, then your feelings for Ellie will end, but Chris tells them that this will not happen because both of us have the same thinking, and we both have the same love for each other. Chris likes talking to others. His friends make fun of him and tell him that he is falling in love with Ellie. The next morning Chris goes to an event while talking to Ellie. Chris finds out that it is a yoga class. Chris and Ellie do yoga together and spend a lot of time with each other. Chris asks Ellie about her boyfriend. Ellie tells him that we are going to get married. Chris asks Ellie if she is happy with her boyfriend. Ellie tells him that he has a good job and a good family. What else do you want? Chris says, I don't think you are happy with this relationship. Ellie says that my mom and dad also like him, and he is a nice boy. Chris tells Ellie that I like you. Hearing this, Ellie tells him that if you think like this about me, then we cannot meet each other anymore because I want to live a good life with my boyfriend. Saying this, Ellie leaves from there, which makes Chris feel very bad. At night, Chris reaches outside Ellie's house and calls her out by throwing a stone at her window. Ellie asks Chris, what are you doing here? Chris tells Ellie that I want to spend some time with you. Both of them go for a walk. Chris tells Ellie that when I was young, I used to come here with my grandfather, and we used to have a lot of fun here. Both of them go to a shop. Ellie buys a birthday card for herself because today was Ellie's birthday. Chris asks Ellie, why did you buy this birthday card for yourself? Ellie tells him that she has bought it for herself on behalf of her father. Actually, Ellie's father was no longer in this world. Ellie tells Chris that when I was young, my father committed suicide, and since then I buy a card for myself on my birthday on his behalf. Chris feels very bad to hear this. So Chris kisses Ellie, and finally they come home and start romancing with each other. Whenever Chris used to romance with any other girl, he used to feel weird, but today when he is with Ellie, he is feeling good. The next morning Ellie tells Chris that whatever happened between us yesterday has no meaning and you should call her, but Chris tells her that he cannot say this. He has felt good with you for the first time, and then Ellie tells him that whenever we meet a new person, we feel the same. Chris tells Ellie that I am not like other boys, so you should give me a chance once, but Ellie does not pay attention to Chris's words. Chris goes to his friends and tells them all this. Chris's friends tell him that till yesterday you were Ellie's friend, and today you are saying something else to Ellie. Chris also understands this, so he calls Ellie and says sorry to her. The next morning, when Chris meets Ellie, they both are talking to each other when the businessman from the reality event comes there. He tells Chris that whatever you told me about yourself is all a lie. You are a writer. Ellie does not like Chris lying like this, so she leaves from there. At night, Chris goes to his friend Mallory's. Chris tells her that it takes time for me to understand girls. Then Mallory tells Chris what is in her heart and says to him that she loves him. Hearing this, Chris' tension increases even more, so he leaves from there. The next day, Chris meets Ellie. Ellie tells Chris that my boyfriend and I are going to get married. Hearing this, Chris gets angry, and he throws away Ellie's engagement ring. Chris says to Ellie that if you do not love him, then why are you marrying him? Saying this, Chris leaves from there in anger. At night, Chris goes to Ellie's house. Ellie goes outside and starts creating a scene. Ellie was also with her boyfriend. Ellie's boyfriend comes down in anger and starts fighting with Chris. Chris had drunk too much, so he gets beaten up by Ellie's boyfriend. Ellie tells Chris that she has no feelings for him in her heart, so forget me. Chris gets very hurt on hearing this. The next day, Chris comes to know that Ellie is going to get married to someone near a heart. So Chris searches for Ellie in the entire city where hearts were made. Many people join him to support Chris. At last Chris reaches near a heart with an arrow. Where he finds Ellie sitting. Actually Ellie had also cancelled her marriage. Chris tells Ellie that I was going to create a big ruckus in your marriage. Ellie tells him that she did not like marrying him. In this way both of them talk a lot among themselves. Chris kisses Ellie and with this suspense the movie has a happy ending.